Three, two, one. Welcome to Jim's Take, episode 158. Nothing is real anymore. That's what we're talking about today. Nothing is real, or at least it doesn't feel like it's real. We're going to talk about trust, suspicion, and how the very fabric of society is becoming unglued and what you can do about it. Why not? Because we all lie in the bed that we make. If you listen to this, you know I'm big on personal responsibility. Not that it's your fault, right? I don't want to go into that, but it's more of how do you make the choices you can make to kind of get that clarity and the little bit of serenity that we all seem to need and want and desire and hope for and clamor for. So that's what we're going to talk about today. This idea like nothing is real anymore, between the AI deepfakes, between the manipulated narratives, the multiple propaganda machines from all aspects of life, the AI voices, the videos you watch online aren't real. The people you meet aren't even real because they're just repeating things that they've heard online. You don't really understand the chain of events that got them to what they're repeating. You don't even know if it's true. And so now we're at a difficult point where we're just saying, well, who do I trust? And what do I trust? And how do I discern what's truthful and not? And how do I just go about my day and focus on paying my bills and doing my good work and being creative and enjoying my life? And that's where we go. I think people are very exhausted right now trying to discern truth, right? It's this added level of complexity onto our day-to-day lives. And so when we can't easily discern truth, we default to suspicion. And we fill in the gaps with our narratives in our mind and our imaginations and everything else. And I would say that trust isn't just broken. It's now being outsourced. And it's part of our reliance on technology. And I think the only way to rebuild our trust is to reclaim the trust we have in ourselves and our ability to do our own thinking. And this is not an easy thing to do when you're being inundated with noise constantly over and over and over. You're deep in social media, you're deep into the podcasts and the emails and the inundation of marketing, and all of these things all distract us from our ability to do really, really good critical thinking so that we can decide what's trustworthy and valid and all of these other things that we need so that we can just go on with our day. So let's talk about what trust actually is. I think trust is this glue that holds the social fabric together, right? It's this invisible agreement that we have that life works best when we give each other the benefit of the doubt, right? And that's ultimately what society is about. It's what social is about. It's, we have these beliefs, this ingrained thinking in our mind that that human beings are naturally good people. And I like to believe that. I want to believe that. And I think that most people are good people, but I feel like consistency, the expectation of truth, shared values are being manipulated. It's this kind of invisible fabric over everything that's slowly eroding away, where we're losing the connection that we have with people and the things that are trustworthy. And we're going deep into our silos. We're going deep into these little echo chambers of just validating what these suspicions are. And the suspicion leads to more suspicion of other people. And I'm talking a lot about people, but there's also institutions. Historically, we never really trusted institutions, right? We never really trusted the government. We never trusted the big banks. We never trusted, right? There was always some kind of thing would happen to say, well, that's just what they do. But we had a faith in the checks and balances that existed, that everything would end up being okay, right? And we had checks and balances. We're like, well, that's crazy, but at least somebody will stick up and fix it, and we could just go on with our lives and do it. And the pressure that we felt didn't really exist because we knew that things were in place, that everything was just going to be fine. And I think that's eroded over time. It's gotten worse through the 80s, through the 90s, through the 2000s, and now it's on overdrive. And these guardrails have fallen off, and the guardrails feel fake. They're hollow. And trust in media, trust in the government, even this idea of expertise has eroded, right? Anybody can just kind of use a ChatGPT and tell you these facts, and they're all wrong. And we see this a lot with the TikTok videos, where my favorite, if I go into TikTok, are the people who are actually experts in fields uh, dismantle these ridiculous nutrition advice posts and this way that imposter syndrome works and everything, and it's all just kind of false, and it's exhausting, right? We're constantly being told why we're wrong, but now it's this idea of being suspicious of what's happening has become exhausting. And if we pause and think of who or what do you actually trust today and why, and do you feel the need to test that, is a very difficult question to ask. If we're really honest with ourselves, it's a very difficult path to go down because we may not like the answer. And challenging ourselves on, does this person, does this institution, does this outlet, does this whatever provide accurate information that I can make decisions that are best for my family, for myself? Do you have those people in place that really you can, either you're comfortable challenging them or that you're comfortable taking what it is that they're putting down? When we're threatened, this idea of suspicion comes up. So they're tied together. I feel like this, not fight or flight. That's kind of a ridiculous, not ridiculous, but it's a stress response. I feel like physiologically, suspicion is a stress response, and it fires off. This doesn't feel right, and this isn't right, and suspicion isn't new. It's been kind of a habit of our lives, but it's a level of suspicion now that's become unprecedented. And we're mentally fragmented. And so we're filling in these blanks with fear, imagination, these narratives from our tribes, these little groups that we have that says, oh, well, then if that what you're saying is true, then this other thing must be true and everything else. And since we're so fragmented, we're not making the logical, proper steps to get to where it is that we need to do to make the decisions that we need to do and stick up for the things that are so important. And you've heard me talk on this podcast a lot. Motivations, values, the things that are important to you. We become more and more suspicious the more isolated we become. And the more isolated we become, the less we engaged. And the less we engage, the more we fill in the gaps. And we can't build trust in isolation. We have to get out and be social. And when we live in silence, and when we're only talking to a screen and we're only consuming information that's thrown at us, where we have no feedback loop and no kind of discussion, almost like a stoic type of discussion. It's not a debate. It's more about curiosity on what other people are thinking. The more suspicious we become, the more stressful we become, and the bigger challenges that we have. And when we stop thinking for ourselves, we don't just lose trust in other people because we're not thinking of ourselves and we're just taking this information. We tend to lose trust in ourselves. And we've lost this ability to critically think. And so while I would say a big challenge is misinformation, just as large as that is mental laziness, right? And oftentimes I go like, all right, I go into these things where I'm like, this is a big societal problem and this is what you could do about it. And sometimes it feels like it's our own fault for not doing this. But I do think we have to stop delegating truth to algorithms and influencers, and we have to start taking responsibility for what we're thinking and does this fit and what do we stand up for. And when we're not doing that, we have no anchors, we have no clarity. We're constantly in this reaction mode, and there is this illusion of knowing. And this goes back to the beliefs versus truth, right? If you believe something, it doesn't make it true. Beliefs and truths cannot be the same thing, right? If you know something, then that fundamentally cannot just be a belief. You believe things that you want to be true, but they're tied. You cannot know something and believe something at the same time. And the awareness of information, we confuse with understanding. And we don't do the deep work to fully understand. And without trust, without critical thought, we drift into this emotional reactivity, which doesn't help anybody. And it's almost like as if you're responding emotionally, it's almost like what the system wants you to do because you're not challenging any of the noise that comes through. And second question, do you know what's really true or what's just repeated? Is it what someone's spitting off of Fox News or MSNBC or read in some kind of fringe blog post, someone who says they do their research and not. And this goes into everything, right? It's heavy on politics, but it's also heavy on nutrition. It's heavy on wellness. It's heavy on health. It's heavy on all of these core components of what make us human beings and what makes us execute on the things that we wish to do. This trust and suspicion has eroded and has gotten into it. And I would say the antidote to suspicion isn't more information. It's more humanity and discovering what the motivations and thought processes of other people, and finding people from these different perspectives, from these different life cycles and different worlds and everything else. And I call these newbies in the preparing for change social component. You need your social system, your support system. You need your little micro interactions with people to remember that you're part of a bigger thing. And you need new experiences to challenge your belief system and recognize trust. And when we think about intentionality of being deliberate in what we consume and believe, there is a feedback loop communication component of this. The humility of recognizing that you may not know something. That's what humility is. When people tell you to be humble, a lot of times they're just telling you to stop being, an arrogant ass. That's my line is I don't think we need more humility, or better, I think we need to better understand what humility is. And I think true humility is recognizing when you don't know the answer to something, and that's okay. And being curious. The people who are in such control of themselves have this embracing of a desire to understand and a desire to be curious. That's what humility really is. It's not just telling people why they're wrong, right? That's such an arrogant response, by telling someone why they're wrong without asking them what they believe and being curious about their mindset and their history and what got them to that point, and trying to piece together their structure of how do I interpret information. That's what humanizes us. And that's what, it takes all types to make the world go around. I believe that. And your social philosophy is an important work to do here in terms of building trust and eliminating suspicion, or having suspicion checked, right? So there's a communication, but you're feeling more of what it is that you actually believe. Rebuilding trust isn't like this top-down process. Give me more information so that I could trust you. Tell me more so I could trust you. Tell me more. That's not what it is. It's more relational. It's more local. It's more one-on-one, and finding those communities of people where you can engage in really good decisions and challenge the things that people say and say, do you really believe that? And tell me more about why you believe that. Because that doesn't, jive with me, and people could go back and forth on that, right? And it's in person between family, community, colleagues. That's why in-person interaction is so much, because it's not just language that we get information from. It's not just words. It's the unspoken things that we get when we're sitting around a table with a group of people, and how people react when somebody else says something. And we learn a lot about other people. And, in the coaching work that I do, a lot of it is, we just talked about something and your body language changed. Why? Right? And why are you changing the physical way that you're sitting, and it looks like you're having a reaction? Tell me more about that and why. And that's a lot of the work that has to happen when we're building trust and suspicion, or eliminating suspicion. And so while we have to do this kind of trust audit, right? I talk a lot about the relationship audit, the people around you. Are they the right people? Are they making you better? But we also have to almost do a suspicion audit. Like, suspicion can keep you safe, but it's not going to make you happy. It's not going to make you satisfied. It's this change component where, most people focus on the change. They don't focus on the person responding to change. It's the same. You can't control the world, but you can control the way that you interpret the world and the way that you respond to it. And that's why this trust and suspicion is such an important component of what we have to do as we choose curiosity. I mean, I did a podcast a long time ago about cynicism. I think it's important to be a skeptic, but I personally have to be very careful where I don't move from skepticism to cynicism. And with the erosion of trust, eliminating the glue that keeps society together, I think that most people are skipping the skeptic and moving straight into cynicism. And that's a very dark place to be. And when we could choose connection over isolation, when we can choose trust, not because everything's real, but because you are, and you know what your truth is and your beliefs are, and what's important to you, and recognizing that just because you've identified something that's important to you, everything around that doesn't make it okay, right? You can challenge things that are normal. If you're deep into religion, there are probably some things about your religion that you just don't believe. That's fine, right? And it's part of your identity. You get to dictate your identity and what part of religion or politics or community do you want to build into your superhero self and say, you know what, I'm going to take a little bit of this, but not necessarily that. And that's okay, right? And some people are going to take that and maybe not a little bit of this, and that's fine. And so how do we build our little component in our little world? It is a big work on individuality, and accommodating social components that are going to fit into that. And so if I were to recap my thoughts on this, if you're still with me, the things we think are the enemy are not necessarily the enemy. Like AI isn't the enemy, but passivity is, right? Mental laziness has a big challenge. It's what we can control. We can't control the noise coming in, but we can control how we interpret it, right? I think trust is a social glue that keeps the world together, and we're watching it melt in real time. Suspicion is a stress response, and it's not insight. Telling people they're wrong is not an insight. It's a survival skill. And we have to limit our suspicion. And when we stop thinking for ourselves, we don't lose trust in other people, we lose trust in ourselves. And when we don't trust ourselves, we can't trust other people. It's the old Jean-Jacques Rousseau quote, how can anyone be satisfied in life if they are not satisfied with the one person they can never be separated from? And I think it's such a powerful statement on our responsibility to ourselves and what's important to us. And we can't just outsource truth and take it from other people. We have to interpret it. You know, we've been told our entire lives what to believe, but it's our responsibility to interpret it and put our own personal stamp on it. And that's the work. And so rather than wait for a better algorithm and wait for, a better kind of, ChatGPT response or whatever it is, I think it's better conversations and getting the perspective of people who didn't just take a leadership class, but they've actually led people. Not the people who listen to this TikTok video or article or whatever, but have actually lived the experience. And I think those are very valuable insights as we piece together, what's happening in our lives and how we're supposed to interpret it. So not everything may be real, but you are. And so do that type of work. And I'm happy to help. I think this is such an important component. When you believe something and recognize that other people can believe something different, that's okay. Right? That's what building a true belief system is, and that eliminates your stress response. It brings serenity, it brings curiosity, and it brings a good way to live. And so those are my thoughts. Trust, suspicion, all that kind of stuff that, we're dealing with right now, and maybe we can make something real. It's not that nothing's real, we are real. So let's focus on that. Have a wonderful week. It's, October, it's a beautiful time. Get outside, meet new people, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks.